What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and our Movement Play of the Week, this week for Week 12 of the 2023 National Football League season. And this week, we have defensive players. Yes, plural, players. There are going to be two players, two of which I could not choose from, and you're going to see why. Two players that, when they created a turnover, went immediately on the offensive and turned into truly dynamic playmakers in their own right after forcing the turnover. We've talked a lot here at Football Beyond the Stats over the years about defensive players being in this offensive player mindset when a turnover is created. And we're going to get in some of the nuances as to what we saw from DaRon Bland of the Dallas Cowboys, as well as Jevon Holland from the Miami Dolphins here in Week 12 that really afforded them this opportunity to be featured here today on our Movement Play of the Week for this week. Again, we couldn't choose from just one, and you're going to see why. Obviously, with DaRon Bland, I couldn't help but be enamored by what he has been doing across the entirety of this National Football League season. Being a relatively unknown guy, he has taken the NFL by storm, created this record-setting performance really across the entirety of the season. But on this day, on Thanksgiving against the Washington Commanders, we're going to see it all come to fruition. And what we must realize is this is only the 11th game for the Dallas Cowboys, which would mean that DaRon Bland has 6 games left to add to this record-setting lead. Of course, he has 5 interceptions now returned for touchdowns, which is just crazy to think about when you compare it to some receivers or some running backs who see the ball much more frequently than DaRon Bland does and who have not scored anywhere remotely close to him. So really impressive feat, scoring 1 pick six, let alone 5. And again, that 5 is still counting. So let's look at him do his work against the Commanders here. Again, it's late in the game, but the Cowboys have already created more than enough cushion for DaRon Bland to go and take some chances. And one we see from DaRon Bland across the entirety of the season is this true trust in this instinct and what he sees and having in a tight circular causal fashion what he's picking up in the world, how he intends to move, meaning those intentional aims to act in a given way, which feeds right into the decisions that he makes. And he doesn't hesitate in pulling that trigger, as we're going to see today, and then acts with this type of malicious intent to go make a play. So again, we're going to be able to get a chance to watch this a couple of times through. Granted, he's about to go make a play on a quarterback, as well as then a number of skill players, including Brian Robinson, running back for the Washington Commanders. And this is something that we're going to talk a little bit more about. Why it is that we need to put our defensive players in these types of created situations in the practice and learning environment. One more time through at 100% speed as we watch some of the nuances that are going to set the tone and the platform for us to dive in deep to what DaRon Bland did here. Again, just really special stuff from Bland, and it should come as no shocker surprise with what Dan Quinn is doing with the defense of the Dallas Cowboys. And what we found from even a guy like Trayvon Diggs or Stephon Gilmore, who maybe have gotten more attention over this last 2 years for the Dallas Cowboys, also playing corner for the Cowboys. DaRon Bland in his second year, a guy who played, I think, 2 or 3 years at Sacramento State and then a year at Fresno State, relatively unheralded here in his second year. He played 17 games as a rookie, started 8 of those, and hasn't even started all 11 games for the Cowboys this year, but has the 5 interceptions. 7 interceptions total, 5 returned for a touchdown. Just crazy stuff, right? And he didn't even have those types of numbers or output in his entire college career, playing at a much lower level against much lower competition. So that just goes to show the growth and the evolution of a skill of a guy like this, and who's just playing with a different swagger and a different flow in his craft. So kudos to DaRon Bland for doing exactly that. But once he gets the ball in his hands, what you see is his form of life, his offensive mentality. And that's something that I want to talk a little bit more about. Let's watch it in slow motion, and then let's talk about that a little bit further. Because that, I believe, is the reason why, as we watch him make a break on the ball here, let's go back one bit. I just talked at the onset about perceptions flowing into cognitions, and those cognitions could be our intentional aims to act in a given way, the goals that we might have globally, holistically, as well as local, moment by moment, these types of intentions, but then also our decisions, and really letting those things be tightly coupled in a circular causal fashion. And of course, those flow into the way someone acts. And when we see players behave and act like this in this type of flow, we can't help but think about how tightly coupled their movement behaviors are to the pickup and connection to the information in the world. Here, a number of things, two in particular. The ball. The ball is highly specifying. Where is the ball? When is it going to get there? Where is it going to arrive? And how do I coordinate my movement behavior in relation to it? Secondly, where is the opponent? And of course, there's two opponents here. It's not just the receiver he's covering, but it's Sam Howell, the quarterback, in the perceiving or the information detection about how he's throwing the ball. All things that are information variables that DaRon Bland is picking up here. But once he makes the break on this ball and he attacks it, he flips his intentions. What does he flip his intentions from? Being a defender, playing defensive back, attempting to either limit how many yards the receiver or offensive skill player is going to get, or maybe knocking the ball down. But when he sees the ball, it's a classic defensive mentality here. See ball, get ball, right? And with the way that he's been attacking the ball, he then has one big global intention in his mind, which is see ball, score the ball. And no one has done it at a higher clip or higher rate in a singular season than DaRon Bland has here in the 2023 season. We also have in those intentions and this rich landscape of affordances and having multiple ways of interacting, what we see from DaRon Bland is these local intentions. It's not just globally thinking, see ball, get ball, score ball. It's what do I have to do moment by moment to act accordingly. So watch him when he gets the ball in his hands. We've talked a lot here at Football Beyond the Stats in our movement play of the week. Perceive to act, act to perceive, right? We've already begun to talk about that. But for a defensive player to pick up the information in the way that we see from DaRon Bland, and of course, I'm just pointing out where he might be looking, as well as hopefully allowing you guys as viewers to come along for the ride with me to speculate what he might be looking at and what he's picking up about the movement problem that's unfolding. We don't often see this from defensive players. We see a constrained, fixed, frozen degrees of freedom, perceptually in many cases. What do I mean by that? We might see them get really tunnel visioned, where they're got this type of affordance offered to them. And let me just clear my drawings here. And they might look with their head straight ahead and go into sort of like linear track sprinter mode, running down the sideline just until they might be caught or angled off by a defender, right? Or maybe chased from behind, depending on what might unfold up here. And so I say all this to say what we see from these higher skilled movers, DaRon Bland in this case, as well as then we're going to see it a little bit from Jevon Holland from the Dolphins as well. These individuals that are able to go on the offensive we're able to see a true offensive playmaker form of life. It's no surprise that DaRon Bland was an all-purpose back in high school, a receiver, just as Jevon Holland was as well, and they both played receiver, scoring numerous times. I think in I want to see if I wrote it down with DaRon Bland. I don't know if I did, but he was an all-purpose back, also playing wide receiver while he was in high school. And with Jevon Holland, who we're going to look at next, he had 1,000 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns. Again, it's in high school, but you're seeing some of this underpinning who they are as a skilled mover. And that's why it's really important for us to look at this, especially with our theme. So let's look at his head and what his eyes might be picking up, as well as when they might be picking that up. You're going to see him constantly look to the opponents. Behavior affords behavior. Let's not miss it. Let's go back a little bit. Watch him again. Look at his head. Look at his eyes. Look at what he might be looking to. He's getting this constant update. Look to his left in his periphery to pick up Howell. Look to his right to pick up the sideline to get himself up more speed. And to continue to set things up, we see him acting deceptively here now. Really cool stuff that we would typically look to see from a running back or a wide receiver in these situations. And they would have to often be a highly skilled running back or receiver at that. To see this deceptive nature, watch him change his movement behaviors, his tempo, his speed, his pace, as well as his movement strategy, his kinematics change with that movement strategy. Then he connects it to Sam Howell. Right here we see it. See him start to begin to slow down. This is deceleration and change of direction in context. This, guys and gals, is true agility. This is agility, a change of direction or change of speed and tempo, or change of pace and direction in response to an opponent, i.e. stimuli or information, right? When you see Sam Howell begin to change, let's watch what we see from DaRon Bland. Again, behavior affords behavior. It's this constant problem solution dynamics. Really high level, cool stuff that we would typically see most defenders in an offensive scenario or situation like this get brought down or get tangled up. But look at how closely coupled those movement behaviors are. Behavior affords behavior, and it's the reason why in our training, practice, and learning environments, we should put the ball in the hands more deliberately and intentionally for our defensive players and allow them to go make other guys miss, whether it's other defenders or offensive players, so both players can catch both sides of this relationship. I don't think we can overstate the importance of this because these are game-changing type plays. Now, in this situation, it wasn't. The game was out of hand for the Cowboys already. But think about how often that does happen, that it breaks a game open or it changes the course of the game. We want defenders to have this type of highly nuanced movement skill. And we look at where his eyes are and how that might feed into the way he's behaving. Really nuanced stuff, highly attuned and sensitive stuff from DaRon Bland. And I am pretty impressed by it if you can't tell. Look at where the eyes are. Look at how he's picking up the movement behavior of Sam Howell. And when he knows he has him dead to rights, now he commits. And I actually paused it at a perfect time and opportunity here for us to pinpoint this out. When we look at Howell's behaviors, I mean, you can tell that he's dead to rights, as I just mentioned, right? He's got nowhere to go. There's no way that he can cut back to the inside if and when there were under the circumstances that DaRon Bland now makes a decisive action to cut this back inside off this hip of Sam Howell. Now, the only way that DaRon Bland could have gotten more tuned, more sensitive, would be if he would have picked up where Brian Robinson is here as well. And I should have probably erased this. So let me go back. And the only reason why I say that, and that would require just a different level of experience, probably a different level of connection and coupling. And we wouldn't see most running backs do that, right? They're kind of moving from movement problem to movement problem, as we've often highlighted. And that's what we see from Bland right here. Now, it happens to work in a highly adaptable way, but we got a number of individuals that become highly threatening to being able to tackle him. Obviously, we got Sam Howell here. We got Brian Robinson there. I don't know what receiver this is, but we got this chaser as well. So it becomes essentially a 1v3 with one guy at an angle, another two guys chasing from behind or at an angle as well. And these are movement problems that we can recreate for all kinds of players, not just defenders, obviously, but more importantly for offensive players who are going to find themselves in these scenarios or situations. Okay. But DaRon Bland here, now watch him go from one movement problem to the next and look at his head, look right to that next threat, because the threat and the challenge creates the highly relevant next local movement problem to solve. And we see him do that in a highly adaptable way, even with the chaser as well as Robinson, who happened to run into each other. And of course, nothing was really going to stop him here at this time. Let's see if it gives us another view. It should, or I believe that it will, as Dan Quinn rightfully celebrates his guy doing his thing. Let me see if I can fast forward for us here. When we get to this point or place, you know, I talked about some of those things, and we can't see it from Bland's perspective. But remember, a few specifying informational variables: the ball, your immediate opponent, and then a far or distant opponent, in this case, the quarterback. So Bland is going to be pivoting his eyes back and forth from receiver to quarterback to try and understand what is unfolding in front of me from the receiver. What route might he be running? And of course, you're relying on tactical considerations, but you're also relying on the information that you're picking up. But when you see a receiver sit, which we can't see happen here, the more skilled instinctual mover is going to do what? They are going to look to where the ball might be coming, when it might be coming. And to do that, they're going to not only look for the ball, but they're going to be looking at who's delivering the ball. And in this case, looking at the posture and kinematics of Sam Howell. At this point, obviously, Bland has already made his break, and he and the ball are going to have this intersection point in the interception, right? And I guess it's here that I want to really highlight some of that, which what we're going to find from DaRon Bland. Watch his eyes a little bit more, and then watch those movement behaviors that we just talked about, tightly coupled to the movement behaviors of the what is, or what is within the what is. Highly instinctual stuff, very cool stuff from DaRon Bland. It's going to be very similar to that which what we will have seen from Jevon Holland against the New York Jets the very next day. So Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, DaRon Bland against Sam Howell and the entire Washington defense on Thanksgiving. The very next day on primetime, Jets, Dolphins, score winding down, 2 seconds left in the first half, in the second quarter here. And it's a Hail Mary situation between Tim Boyle and the New York Jets. And we're going to find Jevon Holland doing the exact same thing as DaRon Bland did, except he's going to take it for 99, which he ends up going for like 130 yards here. If we were to NFL Next Generation stats there, I'm assuming that's about that type of distance. No joke. Again, you're talking about a guy who has their form of life as a receiver, as an offensive skill player. Let's watch it at 100% speed a couple times through. This play lasts a little longer because it goes a little further. And we see Jevon Holland in his third year here, playing safety, free safety for the Miami Dolphins, and doing so in a very similar way with some similar nuances right there. Defensive back against the quarterback in the open field and having to solve some problems in between there. is what we saw from DaRon Bland. So you can see why I had such a hard time choosing between these two plays, and there was really no best choice because both of them were more than deserving. Perceive to act, act to perceive. Behavior affords behavior, as we talked about with DaRon Bland. We see it here from Jevon Holland as well. Defensive player going on the offensive. Obviously, this play took a little longer for us to get through, so let's go ahead and get into 50% speed here as we watch this Hail Mary play out. And let's get ourselves to the point of Jevon Holland taking that bad boy 99 yards back to pay dirt. And McDonald just running off the field, doing the normal thing here. Just everybody about the Miami Dolphins is all about the playmaker mode. And that's the one thing I love that we see from the Miami Dolphins that you don't often see, whether you play offense and you're Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Raheem Mostert or anyone else, or you play defense and you're Jevon Holland, doing your thing here, getting the ball in your hands. Let's look to him and his scanning, his perception. Look at him back and forth, side to side. We see it right there. We talk a lot about it a lot here at Football BS on the stats for very good reason. So many players just aren't attuned and sensitive to being able to pick up information like this, guys and gals. They don't even look from left to right and scan their entire vista, their entire landscape that's in front of us. That landscape that just so happens to be filled with affordances, aka opportunities to act. But this allows one to really get an updated online perceptual pickup, the connection to the what is out there, and what does it mean for me. He's able to then just connect to some of these threats in a highly layered way. Why is he behaving as casually as he is here, even though he's on his horse? Because he knows both these two guys cannot tackle him. They are not actual challenges to him reaching pay dirt. And I think we see that by how casually he navigates past them and around them. He has bypassed all the skill players, I think, with the exception of Tim Boyle, if we're counting the quarterback in this case, the backup quarterback, the backup to the backup quarterback, in Tim Boyle as a skill player. And then I think he's got to bypass or make a move maybe on Breece Hall, who ends up getting blocked in some way, shape, or form. But the majority of the skill players are behind him. Hence the reason why we see him maybe be as sensitive as he is to looking back, behind, around. He's always scanning and always looking around his surroundings, right? And again, highly skillful stuff, but you gotta be really instinctual. But we're displaying, or he's displaying rather, we're not, he is displaying a high movement skill IQ. This to me is football speed, guys and gals. This to me is this entirety of the movement problem solving process. I do want to get to this point where we see Jevon Holland now a 2v1 here with these two blockers who are out in space and some of the threats that are coming. There's more than two there that are going to be threatening, where we see him solve local movement problem by local movement problem. But look at him allow this to unfold and allow his guys, 1, 2, and we see another one entering the space back here. And there we see Breece Hall as well, just coming off and onto our screen. Look at Jevon Holland change his behaviors to allow it to unfold. We talked before about deceleration or change of direction in context. This is it, that we're seeing it again, similar to DaRon Bland, now from Jevon Holland. Behavior affords behavior, but you got to have the ownership in your movement behaviors. Highly skillful stuff. We typically would see a defender in this situation just try to hit this gap between what would be Brees in the sideline, right? They would try to hit this gap with full intention to be on the gas pedal, but not Jevon Holland. Why rush to get to somewhere if what's unfolding in front of you is going to be updated and changed and you are highly perceptually connected to it? High level stuff from Jevon Holland or any skill player if we see this type of movement behavior. Ownership and control in context. And then we see these local movement problems unfolding, this rich landscape of affordances. What do I mean by that? Is there's always going to be opportunities to act that exist everywhere. Where would maybe they be here in this situation? Obviously, if I can get my arrow out, okay, like he could head back this way if he desires. Rich landscape of opportunities. Okay. Opportunities sometimes, oops, don't want to move that there. Sometimes come from lanes, opening and closing gaps, emerging and decaying affordances, the behaviors and the dyadic relationships that we find here across the board. Okay. We see this 1v1 interaction. We see another 1v1 interaction. We see this free guy right here that Jevon Holland is all trying to pick up and connect in a moment's notice. He's not trying to make the fastest, most rapid decision. He's likely moving in a way, and we saw it from Jevon Holland. He's owning, he's controlling, he's coordinating his movement behaviors so he can closely couple them to the best, most efficacious. I shouldn't say best because there's a number of different opportunities to act here, and only we know what is best afterwards. It's about the functionality, the adaptability, and the skillful fit between movement solution and movement problem. And that's what we see from Jevon Holland here. And then that gap opens up, and now his intentions, his local intentions change. He hits the gas pedal to go through this gap when the opportunity is present. He knows this guy, not a challenge. I talked a little bit about that before. I've talked about it over the years here. When a defensive player goes on the offensive, especially when that defensive player has some offensive background, these offensive players have very little training, very little experience, and very little, desire to want to go tackle somebody in space. That defensive player has every desire to find themselves on SportsCenter, right? So the odds are in the defensive player's favor if they go on the offensive. But look at him solving this problem now. At this point, when the threats are low, threat being here, okay, they're not really that threatening because of where they are and what action capabilities they possess. Very, very low in comparison to Jevon Holland. Very low, not only because of their speed capabilities, but also their tackle capabilities. They're likely not going to tackle somebody, especially in space, who's a dynamic player with a ball in their hands. So Jevon Holland right here, right now, is connected and coupled to Boyle. And there he is. You can see how far away they are. I didn't talk before, as I should have, as much with DaRon Bland in interpersonal space and distance. But remember, there's some information sources that are going to be picked up, which are going to be highly specifying to how someone can move. Interpersonal distance and the changing distance. Okay. We're going to see Jevon Holland be awfully sensitive to what he's capable of in relation to Tim Boyle based on that changing interpersonal distance. What else? Angle. Okay. Angle in relative velocity and relative angles in relation to Jevon Holland, where he's going, how he can go there, right? And then, oops, I wanted to erase that. And then also posture and kinematics. So look at when Jevon Holland probably thinks he has Tim Boyle, and now he thinks he has him right where he wants him right now. But watch once this next foot goes in the ground for Tim Boyle. And watch what Holland does. Look, so he sees this. Again, he's probably not consciously or explicitly able to articulate this. He's not consciously controlling it or explicitly able to articulate, but we see this really goofy behavior from Tim Boyle. And Jevon Holland, let's watch it again, looks from right to left because he knows that opportunity is going to be there. He's already starting to prepare for this cut. This right foot for Boyle goes in the ground, and Holland looks to his left, right? This would be this type of constantly unfolding problem and solution dynamics, these changing states of organization that I geek out about and I love to study here, because it's that which we should be investigating and analyzing. He knows he can't, Boyle, that is, can't tackle him in this situation. So he toys with him, he plays with him, especially when he just got a pickup of where Garrett Wilson is and likely what type of threat Garrett Wilson might present by entering that space. So what does Holland do? Based on the fact that now Boyle has tried to break back inside, this has opened up right here. Okay. And again, you can kind of see this unfolding moment to moment. So we don't want to miss it. High level stuff here from Jevon Holland. And we can see it all unfold, which even makes it that much better. And now he toys with them in sort of a Barry Sanders type of fashion. Doesn't even get close to getting his hands on him. And Jevon Holland has just taken that bad boy 99 yards to pay dirt. As his head coach, who's pretty highly excitable, does his normal halftime runoff. As time expires, it's really, truly a walk-off there on Black Friday. Let's watch it in its entirety here from this end zone view, which is going to show us a lot of different nuances that we just highlighted, but we're going to see them from a different perspective, right? Remember what I said. Offensive players very rarely have the desire, intentions, or skill to tackle a defensive player who has gone on the offensive and has gotten in these modes. And we see it here as whether this is NFL Network. Yeah, I think it's NFL Network who messed with our chi there. I would have loved to see the rest of that play out, but we might see it here a bit as Jevon Holland, look at the head, look at the eyes, look at the scanning on a constant perceptual search, attempting to update his what is, his connection to the what is, and adapt his movement behaviors in close relation to it. This is high-level stuff from two high-level defensive players who were able to go on the offensive here, guys and gals. And I think what we are finding is that these game-changing plays don't happen by coincidence. They don't just happen. They happen from a player's experience and exposure to certain problems. Now, could both players probably see those types of problems more frequently in practice at this National Football League level? The answer is undoubtedly yes. And I would love to be able to see more defensive players be given the opportunity to get reps and time and exposure to even these 1v1 types of interactions that we saw between DaRon Bland and Sam Howell and between Tim Boyle and Jevon Holland in this constant circular mutual relationship. Just as we want to expose offensive players to these slices or snippets of the game, we should be exposing our defensive players too. And when we do it, and when they start to feel comfortable and coordinated in owning those types of movement behaviors, I believe that we start to see this instinctive playmaker mode kind of take hold for each one of these types of players when they find the opportunity for the ball be in their hands. But no better place can we see that tight coupling between problem and solution and their changing states of organization than both of these plays that we saw here today on week 12 of the 2023 National Football League season. If you have questions, thoughts, whatever it might be, make them in the comment section below or give them to me in the comment section below. If you like this video, give me the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, share it with whomever you want. Really cool plays as we're seeing week by week here in the 2023 National Football League season. I'm the Movement Miyagi, Sean Mishka. I will talk to you guys in week 13.